I was 79 years old the morning I realized my own grandson thought I'd slipped far enough into the fog that he could pick my pockets clean. Funny how that works. You spend decades building a name, a life, a family, and then one kid with a little charm and a lot of ambition thinks your slow steps mean your mind's gone soft. But let me tell you something and listen close. I might have been moving stiff as an old fence post, but my mind, it was still sharp enough to cut through lies. And what I saw that morning, June 14th, 2022, 9:12 a.m., hit me like a cold slap. The Wells Fargo branch on 82nd Ave in Portland smelled like stale carpet cleaner and burnt coffee. I was there because a letter had come in the week before about unusual activity. I figured it was another one of those phishing scams. But when the teller, a young guy named Nicholas with too much cologne, looked at his screen and then up at me with that careful, pitying face folks reserve for the elderly, my stomach sank. "Sir," he said gently, "are you aware there were 8 ATM withdrawals in the last 2 weeks, all between 1 and 3 a.m.? I blinked at him. "Son, I'm asleep by 9 most nights. If someone's out using my card at 2 in the morning, it sure as hell isn't me." Nicholas swallowed. Each withdrawal was for $300, and the card was used at a location close to, he hesitated, as if debating whether to continue, close to your home address. You ever feel the world tilt? Just tilt enough that the floor feels like it's sliding under you. That's what happened right then. My hands started to tremble, and I shoved them into the pockets of my old Levi's so the kid wouldn't see. Because in that moment one face flashed in my mind, one voice, one laugh. My grandson Kyle, 27 years old, full of big promises and half-baked plans. He'd been stopping by more lately, always with that little pat on my shoulder, asking if I needed help paying bills, reminding me I misplaced my keys last week or that I forgot the name of his girlfriend. Hell, I forget everyone's girlfriend's name. But he'd say it with that soft tone, like he was humoring me. Like I was slipping. Standing there in the bank, I felt sweat gather under my collar, even though it was barely 60 degrees outside. Nicholas lowered his voice. "Mr. Carter, do you have anyone else who might have access to your card?" I could have lied, could have said no, could have played it off. But something inside me hardened, clicked into place like an old bolt lock that hadn't been used in years. "My grandson stays with me a couple nights a week," I said. "He helps out around the house." Nicholas gave me that look again, the kind meant for men who are about to be told something they won't take well. It might be a good idea to check with him. I didn't respond. I just nodded and walked out, the door chime sounding like a funeral bell. When I got to my truck, my '99 Chevy Silverado that Kyle once said was too old to bother fixing, I sat there with the engine cold and the weight of that information pressing on my chest. 8 withdrawals. $2,400 gone. Taken slowly, quietly, like a man testing how much he could siphon before the tank ran dry. "You're probably thinking I should have called the police right then," I told myself, staring at the cracked steering wheel. Hell, maybe I should have. But I didn't, not yet. Because something else was forming in my mind, rising up through the anger, the hurt, the disbelief. A memory from just 2 nights before. Kyle standing in my kitchen at 11 p.m., fridge light glowing against his face as he reached for my leftover pot roast. I'd heard the beep of the microwave and shuffled out with my cane, wondering what the boy was doing awake at that hour. He smiled at me too wide, too warm. "Hey, Grandpa, you're up late, need help with anything?" I remember squinting at him. "Thought you said you had work at 7 in the morning." He'd shrugged. "Yeah, well, couldn't sleep, you okay?" Then he reached for my debit card sitting on the table, innocently, like he was moving it out of the way of the plate, and set it near the fruit bowl. I hadn't thought a damn thing about it. Not until that moment in the bank. Now the questions started lining up in my head like soldiers. Why was he up? Why touch my card? Why so many late-night visits lately? I gripped the steering wheel and whispered, "No, Lord, no, not my own grandson." But deep down, something cold answered, "Yes, your own family is exactly who does this kind of thing." That's what hurt most. Not the money, though $2,400 is no damn pocket change, not the lies. It was the fact he thought I wouldn't notice. He thought I was weak. He thought I had dementia. What he didn't know, and what I'd make damn sure he found out sooner or later, was that I was about to get very clear, very focused, and very dangerous. Because if there's one thing a man learns after nearly 8 decades on this earth, it's this. When your own blood betrays you, you don't strike back out of anger. You strike back out of principle. And I wasn't even close to done. You know, before all this mess, my life was simple in a way only old age can make it. Not easy. My knees had their own opinions and my back could predict the weather better than the TV. But simple, predictable, peaceful. The kind of life where you know the creak of every floorboard, the smell of your own house, the exact rattle your truck makes when it hits the dip in the driveway. Most mornings before Kyle started drifting around again, I'd get up at 6. Coffee first, Folgers black, no nonsense, then the paper from the porch. I still liked the physical paper, even though half the news was just repeats of things I'd already seen online. Old habits die hard, I suppose. My house sits in a quiet corner of Portland, Montevilla, near Stark. Bought the place in 1979 for $46,500, back when you could work a union job at the mill and still afford a home. I raised my kids there. Buried my wife from there, too. Mary, she died in 2016 after a long fight with heart failure, and I'll tell you, losing her carved something out of me that never quite grew back. But by 2022, I'd found a rhythm again. Tuesdays were breakfast at Denny's with the other old-timers from the neighborhood. Thursdays were physical therapy over at Providence. Sundays were church at St. Matthew's, where the sermons were longer than the pastor's patience and the coffee tasted like burnt tires, but it gave me a reason to shower and comb my hair. And for the most part, I didn't need much help. My daughter Linda lives over in Beaverton. She used to stop by every Saturday. She still tried, even when her job got crazy and her marriage was falling apart. "Dad," she'd say, dropping grocery bags on the counter, "please don't forget to take your blood pressure meds." I'd roll my eyes and tell her, "I've survived Vietnam, a heart attack, and 37 years of marriage. I can handle a pill bottle." She'd laugh, pat my shoulder. She never treated me like I was fragile, never treated me like I was fading. But Kyle, he was different from the start. Back then, before any of this, Kyle was the kind of kid you want to root for. Smart, quick-witted, a little too smooth for his own good, but charming in that way people are when they're young and think the world owes them good fortune. He'd come around when he was little, spent summers running circles around my backyard, chasing the neighbor kids, begging me to take him fishing at the Sandy River. I taught him how to bait a hook, how to gut a trout, how to sit still long enough to hear the water talking to the rocks. Those memories, they're the ones that make all of this cut deeper than any blade. But somewhere between 19 and 23, something changed in him. He drifted from job to job, FedEx, a vape shop, a car wash, never staying long enough to build anything solid. He kept saying he was between opportunities. I remember telling him once, "Son, opportunity doesn't just drop into your lap, you work your way up to it." He shrugged it off. Then the pandemic hit, and he never seemed to recover from the aimlessness. By the time he was 27, Kyle would show up at my house all hours of the day with that fake smile plastered on his face, telling me he was checking in. He'd bring groceries sometimes, cheap stuff, off-brands, but it always felt like he wanted something, or was hiding something. And then the comments started. "Grandpa, you sure you didn't already pay this bill? You forgot your wallet again, huh? You should probably let me handle your online banking. It's confusing for older folks." He said that last one with a smirk like it was a joke, but I felt the sting behind it, the dismissiveness. I wasn't stupid. I knew what people thought of men my age, slow, confused, vulnerable, but I kept things to myself. My accounts, my passwords, my credit union statements, I didn't let anyone near them. Except, well, I let him near me, and maybe that was enough. Linda didn't trust him. She told me straight up one afternoon, "Dad, I love Kyle, but he's spiraling. Don't let him get too close to your finances." She said it while slicing tomatoes for a BLT, her voice low and tight. I remember telling her she was overreacting. "Your boy's fine," I said. "He just needs direction." But even then, I could feel something nibbling at the back of my mind. Some little warning that I kept pushing down because he was my grandson. Because he called me Grandpa in that warm voice he used to have when he was 8. And because loneliness, well, loneliness makes a man blind to things he'd normally catch. The real turning point, the moment before the first crack, came in March. I remember it clear as day. Kyle had come over, said he wanted to help with my taxes. I laughed and told him I'd already filed them, claimed I did it myself. I didn't mention the AARP lady at the community center who helped me every year. "Oh," he said, eyebrows raised. "You remembered to deduct the medical mileage this year." I shrugged. "I always remember." He gave me that look, half pity, half disbelief. "Grandpa, you forgot your medical appointment last month. I had to remind you." I snapped a little. Just because I forget an appointment doesn't mean I don't know my own taxes. He put his hands up, acting all innocent. "Just looking out for you." But something changed after that day. His visits got more frequent. His questions got more personal. He'd casually glance at envelopes on the table, ask if I needed help ordering things online, comment about how these things get harder with age. It was subtle, and that's the worst part. Subtle things don't trigger alarms. They sink in slow, like water under a rotting porch. Back then, I still believed in him. Still believed he loved me the way I loved him. I didn't know the storm was already forming. Didn't know he'd already tested the waters. Didn't know he'd started counting on me forgetting things, counting on being able to tell me I'd misplaced money or paid something twice or given him cash I didn't remember giving. No, back then, I was just an old man trying to hold onto the last pieces of family he had left. And the saddest damn part, I didn't realize I just handed him the opening he'd been waiting for. Looking back now, the first crack didn't come with some dramatic explosion. It came quiet, so quiet I almost missed it. That's how these things start. Not with a scream, but with a whisper disguised as concern. It was April 3rd, 2022. A Sunday. Oregon rain tapping the windows like it had nowhere else to be. I just finished church and was sitting at my kitchen table, folding the bulletin like Mary used to do. I remember the smell of coffee, burnt because I'd left it on the warmer too long, and the hum of the old fridge cycling on. That's when Kyle walked in without knocking. He used to knock, used to call ahead too. This time he strolled in like he paid the mortgage. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, already heading for the fridge. "Did you eat yet?" "No," I said, "just got home." He grabbed one of my yogurts, the expensive ones Linda keeps telling me to buy because they're good for gut health, not the cheap brand. Then he grabbed a second one. Then he opened the silverware drawer, took a spoon, and leaned against the counter like he owned it. I watched him for a few seconds, feeling something tighten in my chest. Not anger, something colder, something that said something s off with this boy. He looked down at the unopened envelopes on the table, my utility bill, a Medicare notice, and a Social Security letter. "You need help with any of that?" he asked, tilting his head just slightly, like a social worker, like a man doing wellness checks. "I can read my own mail," I said. He smiled, but it wasn't warm. It was patient, too patient, the kind of smile you give a toddler who insists they can tie their own shoes. Sure, he said. "Just making sure you're keeping track. You know, you forgot your glasses at my place last week." "I was tired, that's all." He nodded again, took another bite of yogurt. "Okay." But then casually, smoothly, he pointed at the Social Security envelope and said, "Mind if I open that? These things can be confusing." Confusing, that damn word. Soft as a feather, sharp as a knife. I said I can handle it. He set the yogurt down. "Grandpa, you've been a little forgetful lately," Aunt Linda said. I slammed my hand on the table harder than I meant to. "Linda talks too much." He blinked, not startled, calculated, like he'd expected this. "Okay," he said softly, "if you say so." He left the envelopes alone, but his eyes stayed on them for a second too long. That was the first moment, right there, when something in me shifted, like a gear sliding out of alignment. I didn't want to believe he was checking on my finances. I didn't want to believe he was sizing me up. But the way he skimmed his eyes over the table, the way he walked through my house without waiting for permission, the way he talked to me like I was already halfway gone. It stuck with me. I tried to shake it off, told myself I was being paranoid. Old men get paranoid. That's what the world says. And when people tell you often enough that you're slipping, you start wondering if they're right. I tried to push it aside. Until the night the crack widened. On April 22nd, Kyle showed up again, late, real late, around 10:45 p.m. I was half asleep in my recliner watching an old episode of MASH reruns when I heard the door open. "Grandpa, you awake?" I grunted, rubbing my eyes. "What are you doing here at this hour?" He came in with that same too easy smile. "Thought I'd check on you. You didn't answer your phone today." My phone didn't ring. It did twice. He said it without hesitation, like he'd rehearsed it. I reached for my phone on the side table, checked the missed calls. Nothing, no Kyle, no one. I looked up at him. "You sure you dialed the right number?" He smirked. "Grandpa, you probably cleared the notifications by accident." Something inside me sank, not because I believed him, but because he thought I would. He settled into the chair across from me, didn't take off his jacket, didn't ask if it was a bad time, just sat there tapping his foot on the rug. His leg bounced like he had nervous energy, like he was waiting for a moment. "Can I borrow $20? He asked suddenly. I stared at him. "You came here at 11 at night for $20. He laughed. "No, I came to check on you, but," he shrugged, "since I'm here, I don't have $20 in cash." "That's okay, card's fine." I stiffened. "I'm not giving you my card." He raised both hands. "Grandpa, relax, I'm not trying to rob you. I just need gas to get home. There's a station 2 blocks away. You could have gone there before coming here." He opened his mouth to respond, but closed it again, like he'd miscalculated the angle he was working. The air got thick between us, heavy. He stood suddenly. "You know what? Never mind, forget I asked." He sounded almost offended, like I'd crossed a line. Then he started toward the door. And that's when I saw it. My jacket hanging on the hook. The pocket unzipped. Now, I know damn well I zip my pockets. It's a habit I picked up after losing a wallet in 1994 at a Blazers game. Kyle looked back at me as he grabbed his keys. "You sure you're okay, Grandpa? You've been, I dunno, different." "I'm fine," I said slowly. "Why?" He gave a shrug, "Just checking." Then he left. But when the door closed behind him, the house felt different. The air felt unsettled. I walked over to the jacket, reached into the inner pocket. My debit card was gone. My breath caught in my throat. My chest tightened. I felt a trembling in my hands that didn't come from age, but from fear. I checked again, turned the pocket inside out, checked the floor. Nothing. I couldn't remember the last time I used it. Couldn't remember if maybe I'd moved it. Couldn't remember because doubt is like mold. It grows in the dark. I went to bed uneasy that night, telling myself I must have misplaced it. My mind was still sharp. Wasn't it? But in the morning, at 7:12 a.m., I found the card sitting on the kitchen table. Right in the center. Placed neatly. Like someone wanted me to see it. And that was the moment, the second crack, when I said aloud to the empty kitchen, "Something's damn wrong here." I just didn't know yet that by then. The withdrawals had already started. You ever have a moment where the world doesn't just tilt, it drops out from under you, where everything you thought you knew about your own blood gets ripped away like wallpaper that'd been hiding rot underneath? That's what happened on May 6, 2022. It was a Friday, warm for Portland, mid-70s, with enough sun to make the pavement shine. I remember because I'd spent half the morning watering Mary's roses, the ones she'd planted back in '03. Keeping them alive made me feel like I was keeping a piece of her alive too. I was sore, leaning on my cane, heading inside for lunch when the mail truck pulled up. The carrier, young woman named Janelle, handed me a stack of envelopes with a sympathetic smile. "Got some financial stuff in here for you today, Mr. Carter. Hope it's nothing stressful." That should have been my first warning. People don't say that unless they've already seen the return addresses. Inside, I set everything on the kitchen table the same way I'd done every day for 20 years. Sunlight came through the window in a way that made every piece of dust float like it had purpose. It was peaceful, familiar. But the top envelope, that one didn't fit the piece at all. Wells Fargo. Fraud Department. My heart gave a hard thud. I opened it with a butter knife because my hands were already shaking too much for the letter opener. The paper inside was heavy, the kind they use when they're about to tell you something you don't want to hear. Confirmed unauthorized activity, it said across the top. Then the details. 8 ATM withdrawals. Dates April 21st through May 2nd. Times 1:14 a.m. to 03 a.m. 2:57 a.m. Exact locations: SE 82nd Avenue, 5 blocks from my home. Total amount: $2,400 withdrawn. All with my card. All while I was asleep. I heard myself whisper, "Lord help me," but my voice sounded like it belonged to someone else, some old man who didn't see the trouble coming. I sat down hard in my kitchen chair. The wood creaked under me, or maybe that was just my knees. For a few seconds, all I could do was stare at the paper while something inside me cracked, not just a little like before. This time it tore. The letter said the withdrawals were made, using the correct PIN. That was the part that felt like a punch to the ribs. No stranger could have guessed it. Nobody had shoulder-surfaced me at a grocery store. I'd memorized that number decades ago and never wrote it down. Only family might have known it. Only someone who'd watched me. Only someone who'd handled my wallet, my card. "Kyle," I whispered. Not accusing, not yet. It came out as a plea. That same afternoon, around 2:30, I drove down to the Wells Fargo branch. The one where the carpets smelled like they'd been soaked in coffee since 1998. The one where Nicholas, the teller with too much cologne, recognized me the moment I stepped in. "Mr. Carter," he said gently, gesturing me to his desk, "we reviewed your account activity again." I sat, clutching the fraud letter like it was radioactive. Nicholas pulled up the screen, then turned it slightly toward me. He hesitated, like he wasn't sure I could handle what he was about to show. "Sir, we have camera footage from the ATMs." My stomach clenched. Footage? Yes, from 3 transactions. The system flags repeated late-night withdrawals, so the cameras captured clear images. He clicked a file, the screen loaded. And there it was. A grainy still photo. 1:58 a.m. April 29th. A young man standing at the machine, hoodie up, shoulders hunched, face tilted just enough for the camera to catch the line of his jaw, the shape of his eyebrows. You could have hit me with a truck, and I wouldn't have fallen as hard as I did inside. Because even through the poor quality, I knew that face. Kyle. My grandson. The boy I taught to fish. The boy I held the day he was born. The boy I let sleep on my couch when he said he just needed a few days to get his life back on track. Nicholas clicked the next photo. Different night, same hoodie, same build, same stance. Same grandson draining my account like he owned it. I felt the room dim around me, like someone had pulled the plug on the sun. My ears rang, my fingers went numb. "Are you all right, Mr. Carter?" Nicholas asked carefully. I didn't answer right away. My throat had tightened until it felt like I was swallowing gravel. He's my grandson," I finally said, the words barely making it out. "I raised that boy, I helped raise him." Nicholas didn't speak. He didn't need to. His silence said what I couldn't yet accept out loud. Kyle wasn't confused. He wasn't borrowing. He wasn't helping. He was stealing from me. In the dark of night. With my own PIN. While pretending to check on me. And that's when something changed inside me. Not anger, not rage. Something sharper, colder. a sense of clarity so intense it almost hurt. Because in that moment, I realized the truth. Kyle didn't think I'd notice because he thought I was slipping. He counted on age to be my weakness. He counted on love to blind me. He thought I had dementia. But what he didn't know, what he'd learned soon enough, was that betrayal wakes a man up sharper than any alarm clock. Nicholas cleared his throat. "Mr. Carter, do you want to file a police report?" I didn't answer right away. I just stared at that frozen image of my grandson at the ATM. The kid who once begged me to take him to MT, Tabor for ice cream. Now stealing from me at 2 a.m. Finally I whispered, "Not yet." Because something had ignited in me, something I hadn't felt in a long time. A fire, a resolve, a hunger for truth and justice. I folded the letter slowly, carefully, like I was handling a badge or a weapon. I looked Nicholas in the eye and said, "I'm going to handle this my way." Then I walked out into the Portland sun with my whole world shattered, but my purpose clearer than it had been in years. You ever notice how silence gets heavier when you're carrying something you can't tell anyone? That's what those days felt like after the ATM photos. Heavy, thick silence. Even walking through my own house felt different, like the walls were listening. Like the air itself had questions I didn't know how to answer. I didn't sleep much the week after I saw those pictures. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Kyle standing at that machine, hood up, shoulders slouched, the glow of the screen lighting the angles of his face. I'd wake up in a sweat, heart pounding like I'd been running even though I hadn't run in 20 years. Some nights I'd just sit in my recliner with the TV on low, watching late-night infomercials and old Western reruns. I couldn't focus on any of it. My mind kept spinning in circles, replaying every moment Kyle and I had shared over the past 6 months. "Checking in on you, Grandpa. I'll help you with that. You probably forgot. You sure you didn't misplace it?" Every word took on a new shape, a new meaning, a new ugliness. And the thing that chewed at me, gnawed through bone and memory, was this: he didn't just steal my money, he stole my dignity. He took advantage of the fact that I sometimes forget where I put my keys or what day my doctor's appointment is. Normal things, human things, but Kyle twisted them into something else, something he could use. It's a hell of a thing to look at your own blood and wonder if they ever loved you at all. About 4 days after the bank visit, Linda came by. She didn't know anything yet, not the withdrawals, not the photos, not the cold fear crawling around inside me. I didn't want to dump that on her. Didn't want to fracture what little family she had left. She already carried so much. She put groceries on the counter, milk, tomatoes, Ritz crackers, the yogurt she's always insisting I eat, and asked, "You all right, Dad? You look pale." "I'm fine," I said, a lie, a big one. It hung in the air like smoke. She gave me that squint she inherited from her mother, the one that said she didn't believe a damn word I was saying. "You sure? You've been off the past few weeks." I wanted to tell her everything, wanted to shove the fraud letter in her hands and let the truth spill all over the floor. But the image of Kyle flashed before me, his smile, his laugh, the little boy he used to be. I couldn't bring myself to destroy that version of him for her, not yet. Not until I was sure about what had to be done. So I just nodded and said, "Just tired." She sighed, gave my shoulder a squeeze, and left for her shift at Providence. I watched her car drive away, and for the first time in a long time, I felt truly alone. Not lonely, alone. The kind of alone where the world feels too wide and your place in it too small. Around that time, little things around the house started to feel suspicious. One morning I found my credit union statement sitting on the coffee table, even though I hadn't taken it out of the envelope yet. Another day I noticed my desk drawer open, the one where I keep old checkbooks and tax papers. Then one night, I remember this vividly, I heard a noise downstairs around 12:30 a.m. Not loud, just a soft creak, floorboard shifting. I sat up in bed, heart pounding. My house is old, it settles. I told myself that, but the settling never sounded like footsteps before. I grabbed my cane, sturdy oak, heavier than it looks, and opened my bedroom door. The hallway was dark still. I made my way downstairs, each step slow because my damn knees don't work the way they used to. When I reached the bottom, something cold brushed through me. The kitchen light was on, but I hadn't turned it on. I stood there gripping the cane, waiting, listening. Nothing. Just the hum of the fridge and the faint tick of the clock on the wall. I checked every room. No one, no signs of forced entry, no open windows. But the weird thing was the key hook by the door. My spare house key was missing. I stood there staring at that empty hook, and the realization sank in like a stone dropping into deep water. Kyle didn't need to borrow my card anymore. He didn't need to wait for me to fall asleep in my recliner. He had a key. He could come and go whenever he pleased. And suddenly, my own home didn't feel like mine. The lowest moment, the true descent, came 2 days later. I was sitting at the kitchen table again, staring at nothing, when I felt a wave of confusion wash over me, out of nowhere, like a fog rolling in. What was I doing here? What was I supposed to be doing today? Did I already take my meds? Did I forget something important? My chest tightened, my breathing got shallow. And then a horrible thought slithered in. What if Kyle's right? What if I'm slipping? What if I'm losing it? The doubt crept in, whispering all the things I'd fought not to believe. I buried my face in my hands and actually said out loud, Am I still all here? It broke something inside me, a moment of weakness I'm not proud of, but I won't hide from it. Those were dark days, the kind that make you question everything you've held onto for decades. I sat there for almost an hour, tears stinging at the corners of my eyes, feeling like a damn fool. That's when the phone rang. Not my cell, my landline. Only a handful of people have that number. I wiped my face and answered. Mr. Carter, a woman's voice said, strong, steady. This is Rosa from Providence. I took care of you during your hospitalization last year. I remembered her, night shift nurse, sharp mind, kind eyes, the sort of person who sees more than you want them to. I was just calling to confirm your appointment for next week, she said, and to check in. You crossed my mind. Something in me cracked again, but not the same way. This time it was like a little breath of air, a little warmth. Checking in, I repeated softly, seems to be a theme lately. She chuckled. Well, I mean it in the genuine way. How are you holding up? I almost said fine, but something in her tone, calm, patient, cut through the fog. Not good, I said quietly, not good at all. She didn't rush me, didn't interrupt, just let the silence hang, gentle and waiting. If you ever need someone to talk to, she said, or someone to help you sort things out, I'm here. And for the first time in weeks, I believed someone. When I hung up, I felt a spark inside me, small but real. A spark that said, you're not crazy. You're not helpless. And you sure as hell aren't done. What I didn't know then, what I couldn't know, was that the call from Rosa would be the start of the turning point. The moment the darkness stopped swallowing me and I started fighting back. Because before a man rises, he always hits the bottom. And I just hit mine. It's funny how strength returns in pieces. Not all at once like in the movies. No dramatic music, no sudden epiphany. Just little fragments of yourself drifting back after you've spent weeks drowning. And it all started with that phone call from Rosa. I hadn't seen her since last year after that bout of pneumonia that damn near knocked me sideways. She'd been the night shift nurse, the one who always said, Mr. Carter, tell me if you're hurting, not when it's convenient. She had a way of talking to you like you were still a human being, not a chart. Her voice lingered in my head long after I hung up. If you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. That night I slept, not well but better than I had in weeks. And the next morning, for the first time in a long while, I woke up angry instead of scared. Anger's cleaner, sharper. It'll cut through fog like a hot knife through butter. I decided I wasn't going down without understanding exactly what had been happening in my own damn house. The first thing I did was gather every piece of paperwork I had, bank statements, credit union slips, Social Security letters, Medicare notices, even grocery receipts. I stacked them on the kitchen table until it looked like a paperwork avalanche. Then I realized something. The more I stared at the numbers, the more they blurred. My eyes were tired, my brain was fried, and shame was still clinging to me like a wet coat. That's when I called Rosa. She picked up on the second ring. "Providence Nursing, this is." "It's me," I said. "Carter." Her tone shifted instantly. "Are you all right?" "No, but I'm ready to be." I could practically hear her smile through the phone. "That's a good start." I told her not everything, but enough. Enough that she understood I wasn't confused or paranoid. She listened quietly, no judgment, no sighing, no "maybe you're misremembering." When I finished, she said, "Do you want help sorting things out? Actual practical help?" "I do," I said, "more than I want to admit." "Then I'll come by tonight after my shift, 8:30. Just like that, a door opened. She showed up right on time, wearing scrubs with little coffee stains on them, proof of a long shift. She walked in with a tote bag and a focused look in her eyes. "All right," she said, setting her bag down. "Show me what we're dealing with." I gestured to the mountain of papers. She didn't flinch, didn't pity me, just rolled up her sleeves. For the next 2 hours, we went line by line through every statement. She explained things as she went, not talking down to me, not rushing me. At one point she paused, tapped a page and said, "These withdrawals, this pattern, it's deliberate. Someone was testing limits." "Testing?" I asked. She nodded. "They started with smaller ones, then increased. They were seeing how much they could take without triggering a fraud alert." My stomach twisted. "So he's done this before." Rosa looked at me carefully. "People don't usually start at 2 a.m. withdrawals. They build to it." That truth settled on me like lead. She kept going, sorting papers into piles. Legitimate activity, questionable, definitely suspicious. The suspicious pile grew too fast. Then she stopped cold. "Mr. Carter," she said softly, "there's something else." She slid a Medicare notice toward me. "You didn't order medical equipment last month, did you?" "No," I said. "Why?" She took a steadying breath. "These charges, someone submitted claims using your Medicare number." My heart dropped. So he wasn't just taking cash. Rosa nodded slowly. "No, whoever did this was getting bolder. Bolder, confident, comfortable. My own blood treating me like a dying man on autopilot." For a moment the room went blurry. My throat tightened. My eyes burned. I hated that I almost cried in front of someone, but she didn't judge me. Instead, she put a hand gently on my forearm and said, "You're not crazy, and you're not alone anymore." It broke something in me again, but this time it broke open, like a wound draining. A little after 10, we wrapped up. She packed the papers neatly, slid them into labeled folders she'd brought. "I want you to meet someone," she said as she slung her tote bag over her shoulder. "A man named Zach. He's an IT specialist, older guy, used to volunteer with a seniors tech program before his arthritis got bad." "I don't need computers." "You do," she said firmly but kindly. "If somebody accessed your accounts digitally, Zach will know. If someone used your Wi-Fi, Zach will find traces. If someone cloned your card, he'll know how. You need a trail, Mr. Carter. Evidence. Proof." Evidence. That word lit something inside me. Something sharp. Something familiar from my days working at the mill, dealing with union disputes and safety inspections. You never win on emotion. You win on proof. "All right," I said, "set it up." She smiled. "He'll be here tomorrow." Then she paused at the door, hand on the knob, and added, "Mr. Carter, whatever's happened, it's not your fault. People don't talk enough about elder exploitation, especially when it's family. Shame keeps victims quiet. Don't let shame help him." Her words hit me straight in the chest. After she left, I locked the door deadbolt latch chain. I checked every window, every room. I held my cane tight, not out of fear but resolve. Because now I had a direction. Now I had help. Now it wasn't just about feeling betrayed. It was about building a case. I wasn't the stumbling old man Kyle thought I was. I was gathering, building, preparing. And the next day, the person who'd helped me take the next step, the step that would change everything, walked through my front door with a laptop under his arm and a look on his face like he'd seen this kind of thing too many times. That was the day Zach entered the picture. And that was the day we stopped being victims and started becoming hunters. Zach showed up the next morning at 9:11 sharp, carrying a beat-up leather satchel and a laptop held together with more stickers than plastic. He wasn't the type I expected. He was older, maybe mid-60s, tall but stooped, white beard trimmed neat, glasses thick enough to start a fire if the sun hit them right. But his eyes were alert, sharp, the kind of sharp that comes from seeing too much of the world and never being surprised anymore. "You must be Mr. Carter," he said, shaking my hand firmly. Rosa filled me in. Then he hesitated, lowering his voice. "I'm real sorry you're dealing with this." I nodded, opening the door wider. "Come on in. I've got everything on the kitchen table." He walked in with the gait of a man who's lived long enough to know when a house carries tension. He paused, looking around, and said quietly, "You've been locking your doors." "Every night." "Good, keep doing that." He was all business. No small talk. No pity. He sat up at the kitchen table, pulling out cord after cord, a portable scanner, a USB device shaped like a little black box, and a notebook filled with handwriting so tiny I had to squint to read the headings. "Let's start with basics," he said. "Did anyone besides your grandson have access to your Wi-Fi?" "No." "Passwords written down anywhere?" "In my head." He nodded approvingly. "Good, smart." He wanted to check my router first. If someone connected a device to your network without your permission, the logs will show it. I didn't know routers had logs. I just knew mine blinked like Christmas lights whenever I streamed baseball games. Zach plugged in the black box, typed fast, and after a minute said, Well, look at this." My stomach tightened. "What?" He turned the laptop toward me. On the screen was a list of devices, some familiar, my old HP desktop, my cheap Android phone, some not. There it was. Kylie phone 27. Connected 11:41 p.m. Connected 1:06 a.m. Connected 2:12 a.m. Frequency 14 connections between April 10, May 3. My heart clenched. That little, he came into my house at those hours. Zach looked up at me, eyes softening for the briefest moment. He didn't just come in. He stayed long enough to use your Wi-Fi. That usually means someone's doing something online they don't want tied to their own network. Like what? Like accessing your online banking. A cold chill crawled down my spine. I never gave him those passwords. You didn't have to, Zach said gently. If he had your card and your birth date, and he likely knew both, he could reset the login. Banks don't ask for much to verify identity. I felt sick. Physically sick. Zach saw it. He closed the laptop and placed a hand on my forearm. Mr. Carter, this isn't on you. Kids these days know how to work the system. And when they target someone older, they know exactly where the weak spots are. Doesn't mean you're weak. I nodded, but shame was pooling in my gut all the same. He spent the next hour scanning everything. My phone, my computer, even the passwords saved from websites. He found traces of something called a remote session log. Means someone accessed your computer using their phone, he said. Either through Bluetooth pairing or a temporary hotspot link. He was inside your files, Mr. Carter. I felt my jaw tighten. What files? Tax records, Medicare documents, banking statements. My hands curled into fists. That son of a... Zach held up a hand. We're gonna get him, but we need to do this right. Right how? He leaned back, exhaled, then said the words that shifted everything. We're going to make a record, a real one, something he can't talk his way out of. I stared at him. You mean evidence? He nodded slowly, deliberately. Exactly. We're going to get him on tape. My chest tightened. He'll never confess. Zach smiled. Not a happy smile, but the smile of a man who's cornered enough liars to know how their minds work. He won't confess, Zach said, but he'll talk. They always talk when they think they're in control. I raised an eyebrow. And how do we make him think that? Zach slid a tiny device across the table, a recorder, but not like the old school ones that looked like bricks. This one was smaller than a thumb drive, matte black, no buttons visible. You keep this in your shirt pocket, Zach said. We'll plan the conversation, steer him, make him comfortable. Let him think you're confused just like he's been assuming. My stomach twisted, so act like I don't know. Exactly. Let him feel safe. Let him underestimate you. You're going to invite him over. Tell him you've been losing track of your bills. Tell him you think there might have been a mix-up with your withdrawals. And he'll slip. Zach nodded slowly. If he's done what we think he's done, he'll take the bait. I sat there for a moment absorbing it, the weight of it. The hum of the fridge filled the silence, steady and patient. You sure about this? I asked finally. Zach leaned forward, eyes locked on mine. I've helped maybe a dozen seniors deal with this kind of thing. Kids exploiting power of attorney, stealing pensions, draining retirement accounts. I know a pattern when I see one. This is textbook. My throat tightened. Textbook. Yeah, they always start small, always escalate at night, always count on confusion, and they always slip up when they get cocky. And you think Kyle's cocky? Zach didn't hesitate. He stole thousands of dollars, used your Wi-Fi in your own home, reset your passwords, walked in and out like he owned the place. He paused. He's beyond cocky. He thinks you're done. I felt something flare in me. Not rage, not grief. Resolve. He's wrong, I said quietly. Zach smiled. Good, then let's set the trap. He handed me the recorder. It felt heavier than it should have, like holding the first nail in a coffin. Call him tonight, Zach said. Tell him you're confused about some bank stuff. Tell him you want him to come over. And then, Zach said, standing and packing his bag, you let him show us exactly who he really is. He paused at the door before leaving. One more thing, Mr. Carter. Don't be ashamed. People don't talk about elder exploitation because they think it makes them look weak. But the real weakness, he pointed toward the street without looking back, it's in the ones who steal from the people who raised them. After he left, I held the recorder in my palm for a long time. Small thing, light, hardly anything at all. But in the hands of a man who's been underestimated, it becomes a weapon. That night I picked up the phone. Not shaking. Not scared. Not confused. Focused. Kyle, I said when he answered, son, I need your help with something. And just like that, the trap was set. The thing about setting a trap is this: you don't rush it. You don't spring it the moment the fox walks into view. You wait. You let him sniff around. You let him feel safe. You let him believe he's smarter than you. That's how you win, not with muscle, not with shouting, but with patience. And on May 12, 2022, just before 7 p.m., patience is exactly what I carried in my chest like a loaded gun. Kyle showed up in that beat-up Honda Civic he always bragged about tuning. The muffler rattled like a coffee can full of screws even though he insisted it was performance exhaust. I watched him pull into my driveway from the living room window, hoodie again, same black one, hands in the pocket, head down. Predator's body language disguised as a grandson. The door opened without knocking. Again. Grandpa, he called out in that tone, soft, cautious, like he was talking to a fragile animal. I'm in the kitchen, I said, keeping my voice steady. The recorder Zach gave me sat clipped to the inside of my shirt pocket, warm against my chest. I prayed it was picking up my heartbeat, because it sure as hell was louder than my voice. Kyle walked in with that practiced smile, the one that never reached his eyes anymore. You sounded stressed on the phone, he said. Everything okay? I didn't answer right away. Let the silence sit. Let him feel like he was already in control. Then I sighed, old man sigh, heavy and defeated. I'd practiced it in the mirror. I think I've messed something up, I said. My bank account looks strange. I can't tell if I'm forgetting things or if the bank made some kind of mistake. He perked up like a wolf, hearing a wounded rabbit. Oh, what kind of mistake? I slid a few statements across the table, The ones Rosa and Zach had marked up with sticky notes. Some real withdrawals, some fraudulent ones. A mix meant to confuse someone who didn't know what was planted and what wasn't. Kyle sat, pulled the papers toward him and squinted. Wow. Grandpa, this is really bad. You've definitely screwed something up. My jaw tightened, but I didn't let it show. Think so? I asked softly. He nodded, flipping through the papers like a man trying to find treasure buried under sand. Look, there's a bunch of withdrawals you probably don't remember making. He tapped the 2 a.m. withdrawals. This right here, you must have forgotten. I swallowed. You think so? Oh yeah, he said confidently, too confidently. You told me you'd been feeling off lately. You forget your keys, your glasses, your appointments. I think your memory's getting worse, Grandpa. The words stung, even though I'd expected them, planned for them. You really think I did this? I whispered. Kyle rested his hand on mine, squeezing gently. It happens. It's not your fault. My stomach rolled. He leaned in. Look, you might have gone out and taken the money without realizing it. You might have used your card late at night and forgotten. Happens to old folks all the time. Old folks? That one hit harder than I expected. I looked him in the eye, my voice trembling just enough to sell the part. Son, could you help me figure out what's going on? Maybe look at my online banking. I can't remember the login. His eyes lit up. The predator smelled meat. Yeah, he said quickly. Here, give me your card. I'll reset it for you. I've done that before for you, remember. I hadn't because he hadn't. But he wanted me to think he had. I slid the card across the table. He reached for it like it was a winning lottery ticket. Thanks, Grandpa. I'll take care of everything. We'll just get you set up so this doesn't keep happening. He pulled out his phone, unlocked it. And right there, right in front of me, he logged into my bank account. With an email that wasn't mine. With a recovery phone number that wasn't mine either. He muttered something under his breath, good still works, and didn't realize I'd heard him. Then he made the mistake we'd been waiting for. He reset the password. Right in front of me. Kyle typed quickly, shielding the screen like I'd care enough to look, but not shielding enough for the recorder. A soft beep. A confirmation email. And then cocky grin, he said. All right, Grandpa, I updated everything. You're all set. Nobody can get in now but me. He froze. I froze. I watched the words sink in, saw regret flash across his face, but not regret for what he'd done. Regret for what he'd said. He tried to cover it up. I mean nobody can get in except, you and me since I'm helping you, just until we fix everything. But the recorder had it. Every word. The admission. The access. The reset. The timeline. The justification. All of it. But I wasn't done. Not yet. I had to let him bury himself deeper. So I leaned back, pretending to look confused. Kyle, these withdrawals, are you sure I made them? Because I don't remember being awake at 2 a.m. He didn't blink, didn't hesitate. Oh, you did, he said confidently. You've been getting up at weird hours lately. You told me that. I told you. Yeah, he insisted. Like last week. You said you couldn't sleep, remember? You said you went out to clear your head and pulled cash for groceries. My blood boiled. I never said any such thing. He was rewriting my life in front of me. Gaslighting me with the ease of a man tying his shoes. That doesn't sound right, I whispered. He leaned in again, soft voice, gentle tone. Grandpa, you forget more than you think. That's why I'm here. That's why I've been helping you. Helping me. Helping me. I let out a shaky breath. So I withdrew the money. Yes, he said firmly. And I reset the online banking. Well, no, he started. No, I said, feigning confusion. He swallowed. No, I did, but only because you asked me to. I looked at him, eyes trembling, voice cracking. Kyle, did I ask you to take care of my finances? He hesitated. Yeah, you did, a few weeks back. You said you couldn't keep up with everything and wanted me to help. Lie. Clean. Sharp. Delivered like he'd practiced it. Did I give you money? I asked quietly. He stiffened. Now he was nervous. But he doubled down. Yes, you did, couple times, you just forgot. I let the silence sit. Let the recorder soak every poisoned word. Then I nodded. Thank you, son, I appreciate your help. He relaxed, sat back, smirked a little. He thought he'd won. Thought he'd secured control over an old man slipping into confusion. Of course, he said, anything for you, Grandpa. Not even an hour later, after he left with my card still in his pocket, by accident, of course, the recorder was safely in Zach's hands. He listened to it twice without speaking. When it finished, he looked up at me. Well, he said, voice low and steady, he's toast. I exhaled. For the first time in months, the air felt clean. The trap hadn't just worked. Kyle had walked straight into it, smiling. And what came next would be public. Very public. There's a moment, an exact moment, when a man who's been lying realizes the walls are closing in on him. It's not panic at first. It's confusion, then dread, then that cold, hollow understanding that the game is over. For Kyle, that moment came on May 19th, 2022. But before we get there, you need to understand what the days leading up to it looked like, because that's where the real unraveling began. Zach spent the entire night after Kyle's visit reviewing the recording, backing it up in 3 places, and drafting out a timeline like he'd been doing this his whole life. The next morning, he sat across my kitchen table with his glasses perched low and said, "We've got him, Mr. Carter, but this isn't over, not by a long shot." "What else do we need?" I asked. "Everything," he said. "We're going to build a trail so airtight he couldn't wiggle out if he hired the entire Portland Bar Association." He wasn't joking. Rosa came by that evening with 2 folders, one for Medicare fraud documentation, one for suspected financial exploitation forms. "This is what the authorities take seriously," she explained. "Medical ID fraud is federal." Federal. That word dropped into my stomach like a stone. But it also made something inside me stand taller than it had in months. For the first time since this whole mess started, I wasn't the one being questioned. I wasn't the one doubting myself. Kyle was the one on the edge of a cliff. The final straw, the one that cut off any last thread of doubt, came 3 days before everything blew open. I woke up on May 16th to find my back door unlocked. I always lock that door, always, especially after the missing key. I walked slowly through the house, heart pounding. Nothing looked out of place at first glance, but something felt, touched, like the air had been disturbed. The dining room chair was pulled out an inch too far. A coaster was slightly crooked. My desk drawer was shut, but the latch wasn't fully clicked. Then I saw it. The bowl in the kitchen, the one where I tossed spare change, was empty. Not a dime left. Childish thing to take. But it wasn't the money. It was the message. "I can come and go, and you won't stop me." That was the moment, standing in my own kitchen in the early morning light, when my fear burned off like fog. I wasn't scared of him anymore. I was done. And I was angry. The unraveling truly began on May 19th. Zach and Rosa sat with me at the kitchen table again, this time with paperwork stacked so neatly it looked like a court exhibit. Zach had printed the transcripts from the recording, time-stamped. He had screenshots of the router logs. He had the ATM photos. He even printed off Kyle's text messages from the past 6 months, showing the pattern of late-night visits. "Today's the day," Rosa said. "You ready?" "As ready as a man can be when dealing with his own damned grandson," I said. At 3:06 p.m. my doorbell rang. "Kyle." Same hoodie, same hands-in-pocket stance, same fake warmth in his voice. "Hey, Grandpa," he said, stepping in. "You sounded upset on the phone." "I am," I said flatly. "No performance this time." He blinked. "What's wrong?" "Sit down," I said. He hesitated. A flicker of doubt crossed his face, but he sat. Rosa emerged from the hallway. Zach stood beside her. Kyle's eyebrows shot up. What's going on? Zach placed the printed transcript on the table. We need to talk, I said. Kyle's eyes darted to the pages, then to me, then to Rosa. His smile faltered. What's this? He asked. The conversation we had last week, I said. The one you didn't know I recorded. His face went pale, completely pale. What? He whispered. Zach leaned forward. You admitted access, you admitted resets, you admitted withdrawals, it's all here, Kyle. Kyle shook his head. No, I didn't. He's confused. Stop. My voice came out sharper than I expected, stronger. He froze. You lied to me. You stole from me. You used my Medicare. You broke into my home. Do not sit here and tell me I'm confused. He swallowed hard. Sweat gathered at his temples. Grandpa, please, I can explain. That's the problem, I said. You think I'm still the man you could talk circles around, but I'm done listening to your stories. He looked at Rosa, desperate. Can you tell him he's not remembering things right? Actually, Rosa said firmly, your grandfather is more lucid than I've ever seen him. He's not confused. You are. He turned to Zach. You can't use that recording. That's illegal. Zach snorted. Oregon is a one-party consent state. He was the one party. Kyle's jaw dropped. I watched it all, heart pounding, not out of fear this time, but out of grief. Because no matter how angry I was, this was still my grandson. And watching his lies crumble in front of him was like watching a house catch fire when you built it with your own hands. Grandpa, Kyle's voice cracked. Please, I'm your family. I exhaled, a long, painful breath. That's what makes this hurt, I said. If you'd been a stranger, I'd have called the cops immediately. But because you're family, I let it go long enough for you to do serious damage. He looked down, shaking. He wasn't sorry he'd done it. He was sorry he'd been caught. I slid the stack of documents toward him. This is everything the police will need, everything the bank needs, everything the federal investigators need. His eyes widened. No, Grandpa, please, you can't. This will ruin my life. His life. His life. He never once stopped to think about what he did to mine. Your choices ruined your life, I said, voice low. I'm just ending the part where you ruin mine. He broke. He started crying, loud, messy, panicked cries. He dropped to his knees and grabbed my hand, begging, pleading, pressing his forehead to my knuckles. Please don't do this, he sobbed. I'll pay you back, I swear I'll change. I swear, please, Grandpa, please, I'm your grandson. My eyes stung, my throat tightened. I felt the ache of every memory we'd ever shared. Then I said the sentence that still haunts me. I know, son, but not anymore. He froze, let go of my hand, stood up slowly, and for the first time I saw the real Kyle, the anger behind the mask. You're choosing them over me, he spat, pointing at Zach and Rosa, two strangers over your own blood. I nodded. I'm choosing the truth over a liar. And that was the knife that cut the last thread between us. He stormed out the door, slamming it so hard the windows rattled. But what he didn't know, the unraveling had just begun. Because the moment the door slammed shut, Zach dialed the number he'd already written on a sticky note. Time to call the police, he said quietly. And I didn't stop him. Not this time. The police came the same evening. 2 officers from the Portland Bureau, Officer Daniels and Officer Ruiz. Both younger than my kids, both with that patient, practiced calm they use when dealing with the elderly. Only this time, they didn't treat me like someone drifting into confusion. They treated me like a victim of a crime, a serious one. When I handed them the folder Zach and Rosa helped put together, Daniels whistled low under his breath. This is one of the cleanest documentation sets I've ever seen, he said. Most folks don't come to us with this level of detail. Ruiz nodded. We'll file this tonight. You did the right thing, Mr. Carter. I didn't feel like I'd done the right thing. Not yet. It felt more like I'd shoved my own blood into a storm he'd never walk out of the same. But then again, He'd shoved me into my own kind of storm months ago, hoping I wouldn't make it out at all. The officers asked their questions, took their notes, made photocopies, and logged the digital files Zach had organized. Rosa sat on the couch beside me, her hand resting on my arm whenever my voice caught or cracked. Zach stood against the wall, silent, arms crossed, equal parts watchdog and sentinel. Before they left, Daniels looked at me and asked gently, "Do you want us to notify him?" I swallowed hard. "Yes," I said. "I think somebody else needs to tell him the world's changed." They left with the folder, with the evidence, with pieces of my life in their hands. When the door shut behind them, the house fell quiet, real quiet, the kind of quiet that doesn't feel peaceful, it feels final. Kyle didn't show up again, not that day, not the next. But on the third day, the phone rang. Unknown number. Blocked ID. I answered anyway. A woman's voice, sharp, clipped, professional. "Mr. Carter, this is Detective Hall with the Portland Police Bureau Financial Crimes Unit. I'm calling regarding your case." My pulse quickened. "Yes, ma'am." "We've interviewed Kyle Carter. He denied everything at first, but when presented with the recording, he stopped talking." "Stopped talking?" "That told me everything." She continued, "We'll be moving forward with charges of elder financial exploitation, identity misuse, and Medicare fraud. Because you are over 65, these fall under enhanced penalties." Enhanced penalties. The phrase struck me with a mix of relief and grief. I didn't know whether to thank her or apologize for the trouble. "Do you need anything else from me?" I asked. "No," she said gently. "Thanks to your preparation, we have everything we need." She paused, then added softly, "Most seniors never come forward. You did, that matters." I couldn't speak for a moment. My throat tightened. She waited, then ended the call with, "We'll keep you updated." I set the phone down and just sat there, staring at the wall, breathing slow, feeling old in a way I hadn't expected. Because justice isn't clean. It's never clean. Not when it's family. A week passed. Then two. Kyle didn't call, didn't text, didn't send some half-baked apology. Silence. I heard through Linda, who found out through a cousin who'd heard something from a friend, that Kyle was living with some guy in Gresham, sleeping on a couch. She cried when she told me, said she felt like she failed him. No, I told her, he made his choices. But that didn't stop her from hurting. And it didn't stop me from hurting either. Mary used to say pain is like water, it always finds the cracks. And Kyle had given me plenty. 2 months later, in late July, I sat in a small courtroom downtown, Multnomah County Circuit Court. The air smelled like old carpet and hand sanitizer. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead. Kyle sat on the opposite side of the room, shackled at the wrists. He wouldn't look at me. Detective Hall nodded at me when she walked by. Officer Daniels gave me a respectful pat on the shoulder. Rosa sat beside me in the gallery, and Zach stood next to the door like he was guarding the whole damn courthouse. The judge read the charges. Kyle pled no contest. I kept waiting to feel triumph, victory, vindication, something grand, something powerful. I felt none of that. Just a deep, cold ache that settled into the grooves of my bones. The judge sentenced him to 3 years, probation, mandatory restitution, and community service with seniors, under supervision only, never alone. A part of me had expected prison. A part of me had dreaded it. Probation was mercy. But it wasn't mine to give. Kyle was led out of the courtroom without ever lifting his eyes to mine. And just like that, it was over. At least legally. Emotionally, not even close. So here's where I am now. It's September, and the roses in the backyard are still blooming. Mary would have liked that. She always said late blooms meant the garden still had hope left in it. I sit on my porch most evenings, watching the neighborhood kids ride past on their bikes. Sometimes Linda comes by. Sometimes Rosa stops in after a shift with leftover sandwiches from the hospital cafeteria. Zach works on my router once a month even though it doesn't need it, just an excuse to check on me. The house is quiet again. But it's my quiet. Safe quiet. Honest quiet. There are moments, late at night, when I think about Kyle, the boy he used to be, the man he turned into, the man he could still become if he ever learned to stop taking and start owning the damage he caused. Do I hate him? No. Hate takes too much from a man who's already lost plenty. Do I forgive him? Not yet. Maybe not ever. Forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned. What I do feel is something I never expected. Relief. Relief that I didn't let myself disappear quietly. Relief that I didn't let confusion take root where truth belonged. Relief that an old man from Montevilla still had enough fight in him to stand up, really stand up, when it mattered. If there's anything to take from all this, it's simple. When they think you're weak. When they count on your silence. When they mistake age for surrender. They forget one thing. Old men carry long memories. And longer justice. And sometimes the quietest voices make the loudest reckonings.